Let me ask you something. What animal are you most afraid of in the ocean? You already know your answer. You did not even have to think about it. And I already know your answer too. Because almost everyone gives the same one. The same mental image. The same sound from a movie you probably saw decades ago. Two notes, low, getting louder, and a fin cutting through the water. Here is what I want you to do before we go any further. I want you to hold that fear in your mind for a moment. Really feel it. The way your stomach tightens when you are swimming and something brushes your leg. The way you instinctively pull your feet up. The way open water feels different from a pool, even when you know, rationally, that nothing is there. That fear is real. I am not going to tell you it is stupid or irrational, but I am going to tell you something that might be harder to hear. That fear is not ancient. It is not hardwired into your DNA by millions of years of evolution. It is not some deep primal truth about the relationship between humans and sharks. It was created, deliberately, by a specific series of events. And once you understand what those events actually were, the fear does not disappear entirely, but it changes shape. And what it becomes is something much more interesting than terror. Stay with me, because we are going to go through 5 things about sharks that almost nobody knows. 5 things that were hiding under the surface in the most misunderstood animal on Earth. And I promise you, by the time we are done, the ocean is going to look very different to you than it does right now. Let us start with the fear itself, where it actually came from. Because the answer is not where you think. There is a date that changed everything. July 1st, 1916. Before that date, the scientific consensus in America was clear and confident. Sharks in the temperate waters off the New Jersey coast would not attack a human being unprovoked. The idea was considered so far-fetched, so contrary to the known behavior of these animals, that serious marine scientists dismissed it as sailor mythology, as exaggeration, as the kind of story that gets told in port bars after too many drinks. The experts were wrong. On July 1st, a 25-year-old man named Charles Van Sant went for an evening swim off the coast of Beach Haven, New Jersey. He was on a family vacation. It was a warm summer evening. The water was calm. He did not come back the same. In the next 11 days, 4 more people were attacked on the Jersey shore. 4 of the 5 died. The attacks were not in the deep ocean. They were not in remote waters. They were in shallow, populated family vacation territory. One of the later attacks happened in a creek, miles inland, by an animal that should not have been there at all. The effect on the American public was immediate and enormous. Beach attendance in the area dropped by 75%. Coastal resorts lost what would be approximately $7.5 million in today's value. Towns installed nets. Newspapers ran headlines that turned the Jersey Shore into a war zone. Hunting parties went out to kill sharks. And something shifted in the American imagination that has never fully shifted back. Before 1916, sharks were a background feature of the ocean. After 1916, they were monsters. The distinction felt important. The distinction felt personal. Then, 59 years later, a filmmaker named Steven Spielberg made a movie. You already know this movie. You probably know the first 2 notes of its score. You may have seen it so many times that the scenes feel like memories. Jaws opened in June of 1975 and became the first modern summer blockbuster. It broke box office records. It made the mechanical shark into an icon. It also made something else. In the summer of 1975, beach attendance dropped 28%. Shark hunting skyrocketed as amateur hunters took to the water to kill the beast from the screen. A real animal already facing pressure from commercial fishing suddenly had an entire culture hunting it for sport and for vengeance against a fictional creature. Here is the part of this story I find most extraordinary. The man who wrote the original novel that Spielberg adapted, Peter Benchley, who published Jaws in 1974, spent the last 3 decades of his life trying to undo the damage his book had done. He became a marine conservationist. He advocated for shark protection. He said publicly, and more than once, something that I think deserves to be read in full. He said, "I couldn't write Jaws today. The extensive new knowledge of sharks would make it impossible for me to create, in good conscience, a villain of the magnitude and malignity of the original." The man who created the great white as a cultural monster spent the rest of his life apologizing for what he had done to the actual animal. The fear you carry about sharks was not given to you by evolution. It was given to you by an 11-day period in the summer of 1916, and a film that opened when you, or your parents, or their parents, were young enough to be permanently shaped by it. And now it is time to meet the actual animal. Before we go any further, I want to say something directly to you. If you found this channel and you stayed this long into this story, thank you. Genuinely. This channel exists because people like you are curious enough to look past what the surface shows. If you have not subscribed yet, a gentle tap on that button would mean more to me than I can easily express. It costs you nothing. It keeps this work alive. Now, let us talk about what sharks actually are. Here is the first thing that almost nobody knows. You are more likely to be killed by a cow than a shark. Not slightly more likely, significantly more likely. In the United States alone, cows kill approximately 22 people per year. Bees kill 53. Vending machines that tip over have killed more people in American recorded history than great white sharks. The 3 species responsible for most fatal shark attacks, the great white, the tiger shark, and the bull shark, have collectively killed 129 people in all of recorded human history. All 3 species, all documented incidents, every country, every ocean, every decade since records have been kept. 129 people across all of human history. Your lifetime odds of being killed by a shark are approximately 1 in 3.75 million. You are 750 times more likely to be struck by lightning. You are more likely to be bitten by another person walking down a New York City street than to be bitten by a shark anywhere in the world. So why does the great white terrify us in a way that cows and bees and vending machines do not? The answer is not really about sharks at all. It is about us. We are wired to fear things that are invisible, unpredictable, and outside our control. Sharks check every single box. They live in a world we cannot see. They move without sound. They are powerful in an environment where we are helpless. They are the version of danger that feels mythic rather than mundane. A vending machine falling on you is a bad day. A shark attack is a story. It is the kind of fear that makes good cinema, because it speaks to something ancient in the human imagination. The idea of being hunted in darkness by something you cannot see coming. The shark did not create that fear. We projected it onto the shark because it fit the shape, and the shark has been paying the price ever since. Here is the second thing that changes everything. Sharks do not want to eat you. Not the great white, not the tiger shark, not the bull shark, not any of the 3 species that have ever been responsible for a fatal attack on a human being. I know how that sounds. I know what the films showed you. But here is what the science actually says. When a great white shark encounters something unfamiliar in the water, a surfer, a swimmer, a diver. It does not attack in the way you picture from the films. It investigates, it approaches, and the way sharks investigate unfamiliar objects is the same way they investigate potential food. They take a test bite. A test bite is exactly what it sounds like. A single bite to determine what something is, to figure out whether this unfamiliar object is worth eating. The shark is gathering information. It is not attacking. It is tasting. It is checking. And almost every single time, what it discovers is that the human being does not taste right. We are not what sharks evolved to eat. We do not have the caloric density of a seal. We are mostly lean muscle and bone. For a shark that needs to sustain a large body in cold water, we are a terrible meal. The moment the great white takes his test bite and realizes what it has bitten, it almost always withdraws. The problem is that a test bite from a great white shark can be fatal or severely debilitating. The size of the animal and the force of its jaws mean that even a single bite made without predatory intent can cause catastrophic injury. The shark has no way of biting softly. The investigation is inherently dangerous. But there is a fundamental difference between an animal that attacks you because it wants to eat you and an animal that bites you because it made a mistake and is trying to figure out what you are. If great white sharks actually wanted to eat us, the fatality rates would be orders of magnitude higher. There are millions of people swimming in the ocean every single day. Great whites patrol the same coastlines year after year. If they were hunting humans, the statistics would look completely different. They are not hunting us. They are trying to understand us. And occasionally, that understanding costs someone their life. That is a tragedy. Every single one of those deaths is a tragedy. But it is a very different tragedy than the one the films told you about. The monster that chooses you, that hunts you, that wants you specifically. That shark does not exist. The actual animal is something much more interesting. Here is the third thing. There are over 500 species of sharks in the ocean. 500 and more. You know 3 of them. Maybe 4. You know the great white, the tiger, the bull. You probably know the whale shark because someone showed you a picture of a diver next to something impossibly large. And that is more or less where most people's knowledge of shark biology ends. But the other 497 species are out there, and some of them are so bizarre, so unexpected, so far from the creature in your mental image of a shark, that knowing about them feels like being let in on a secret that the ocean has been keeping. Let me give you some of them. Port Jackson sharks form sex-segregated friendships. They return to the same resting spot every year, always in the same group. The same individuals, year after year, choosing to spend their resting time together, not because they are competing for food or territory, because they are familiar with each other, because the group provides something. It is not the behavior you imagine when you picture a shark. It is closer to what you would describe if someone asked you about your group of friends who always book the same holiday house every summer. The hammerhead's distinctive head, the structure that makes it one of the most recognizable animals in the ocean, gives it something extraordinary. 360 degrees of vision. It can see in front of and behind itself simultaneously. It can pin stingrays to the seafloor, using that broad head like a tool. And hammerheads travel in schools of up to 500 individuals. Not in pairs, not in small groups. 500 hammerhead sharks moving through the water together in formations that look, from above, like something between a flock of birds and a city traffic pattern. We are still working out why they do this. The hammerhead also has a peculiarity that you would not expect from an apex predator. To conserve energy, It swims on its side 90% of the time, tilted at 50 to 70 degrees from vertical. Not occasionally, 90% of the time. Scientists measured this and confirmed it. The hammerhead, one of the most visually dramatic animals in the ocean, spends most of its life swimming sideways because it figured out that this reduces drag and saves energy. It found the efficient option and committed to it completely. The goblin shark looks like something that crawled out of a nightmare. Translucent, pinkish skin, a long, blade-like snout that protrudes from its face at an angle that looks structurally wrong. Small, beady eyes. It lives in the deep ocean, in waters so dark that its appearance seems like something that went wrong in the design process, rather than something that was selected for. And then it feeds. When a goblin shark detects prey, its jaw launches forward out of its face. Not opens, launches, extends, projects outward from the skull in a rapid slingshot motion that gives it a reach it should not have. Rows of needle-sharp teeth snap closed. The jaw retracts. The whole sequence takes less than a fraction of a second. It is genuinely one of the strangest things in the ocean to watch, and it lives so deep that no human being would ever encounter one. Then there is the epaulet shark, which is small and spotted and lives in the shallow tidal zones of the Australian and Papua New Guinean coasts. When the tide goes out and leaves it stranded in a rock pool or on an exposed reef, it does not thrash and die the way most fish would. It activates something that marine biologists have described as the most extraordinary physiological response to oxygen deprivation documented in any vertebrate. It reduces its heart rate dramatically. It drops its blood pressure by 50%. It shuts down the non-essential parts of its brain. It slows its entire metabolism to a near standstill. And in this state, it can survive on its last breath of oxygen for up to an hour without any brain damage. 15 times longer than a human being could survive the same conditions. And then, when it has conserved enough energy and the conditions are right, it extends its pectoral fins sideways, braces them against the rock, and walks, not swims, walks, across exposed reef, through air, in search of a pool of water deep enough to breathe in. A shark that walks on land to survive, that shuts its own brain down to wait out a crisis. That has been doing this, in this form, for longer than most large animals have existed. This is what was hiding behind the great white. This is the ocean that most people never see. Here is the fourth thing, and I want you to pay attention to this one specifically, because it connects directly to something you experience every single day without knowing it. Sharks are infrastructure. I mean that literally, not as a metaphor, not as a romantic statement about the importance of wildlife, as a description of a functional role in a system that the whole ocean depends on to operate correctly. Let me show you what I mean. In 2004, a bay scallop fishery off the coast of North Carolina collapsed completely. This fishery had operated for over a century. It had supported entire coastal communities for generations, and in a few short years, it was gone. Here is what happened. In the years before the collapse, populations of bull sharks and tiger sharks in the surrounding coastal waters had been severely reduced by overfishing. These sharks were the apex predators of that ecosystem. They kept the populations of everything below them in check. When they disappeared, those populations, freed from predation, began to grow, including the cow-nose ray. Cow-nose rays love scallops. Without sharks to hunt them, the ray population increased by almost 10 times its previous levels in some areas. 10 times. And then 10 times as many cow-nose rays went to work on the scallop beds. By 2004, there was nothing left. The scallop beds were gone, the fishery was gone. The boats that had harvested those scallops for generations sat at the docks with nowhere to go. This is what ecologists call a trophic cascade. When you remove a predator from the top of a food chain, the effects don't stop at the species it was eating. They cascade downward. Every level of the food chain shifts. And when the predator is a shark, an animal that sits at or near the very top of the marine food chain, the shifts can reach all the way to the bottom. Seagrass beds are grazed into bare sand by fish populations that have no predator keeping them in check. Seagrass beds are carbon sinks. They pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and lock it into root systems and sediment. When they disappear, that carbon goes back into the air. Coral reefs are scraped into rubble by herbivorous fish that would normally be kept at sustainable numbers. Dead zones expand. And then there is something else. Something at the level of genetics that most people never hear about. When sharks hunt, they target the sick and the weak. This is how apex predators work. The animals that are hardest to catch are the fastest, the healthiest, the most alert. The ones that get caught are the ones that have something wrong with them. By removing these animals from the gene pool, sharks have been continuously improving the genetic fitness of every prey species they hunt for hundreds of millions of years. Remove the sharks, and that pressure disappears. The sick animals survive and reproduce. The weak animals survive and reproduce. The gene pool of entire species begins to deteriorate, not in one generation, not in 10, but over time in ways that are visible in the data and that have no easy reversal. Sharks are not just predators. They are selection mechanisms. They are population controllers. They are carbon cycle managers. They are the maintenance crew of the ocean's biological machinery, and they have been doing this job for 450 million years. Without them, the machine breaks down, and the machine is already showing the strain. This is the halfway point of this documentary, and I want to ask you to stay with me for the fifth thing, because the first four things I have told you were about what sharks are, what they actually are, underneath the fear and the films and the 1916 Summer of Terror. They were about scale and reality and the strange, wonderful, unexpected complexity of 500 species living in the ocean's darkest corners. The fifth thing is about what we are doing to them, and it is the one that matters most. Subscribe to Abyss Files if you have not already. Every week we go somewhere the surface does not show you. This channel exists for stories like this one, and we are not done yet. The Ming Dynasty of China began in 1368. Among the many things that emerged from its imperial court was a culinary tradition that would, 6 centuries later, become the single greatest driver of shark mortality on the planet: shark fin soup. The fins of sharks were prized by the imperial court as a luxury ingredient, not for flavor. The fins themselves are almost tasteless, contributing little more than thin gelatinous strands of texture to the broth. The value was entirely in the signal. To serve shark fin soup was to communicate wealth, power, and the ability to obtain something rare and dangerous. It was status in a bowl. The tradition endured through the Ming Dynasty and every dynasty that followed, through the colonial period and the revolutions and the modernization of China, and the extraordinary economic growth of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. As hundreds of millions of people entered the middle class and beyond, the demand for this status symbol did not decline. It grew. Today, shark fins can fetch prices of $1,100 per kilogram, sometimes significantly more in premium markets. The global shark fin trade is estimated to kill between 26 million and 73 million sharks per year, just for their fins, just for the gelatinous strands of texture in a bowl that tastes of very little. And the method of obtaining those fins is exactly as brutal as you might imagine. A shark is caught, its fins are removed, and then, because the rest of the animal is considered less valuable, because the weight of the full shark makes transport inefficient, because the economics of the operation favor the fins over the body, the shark is pushed back into the water, still alive, unable to swim without its fins, unable to pump water over its gills without the forward motion that finning prevents. The shark sinks, it suffocates, it bleeds, it dies in the dark water it has lived in for its entire life, reduced in its final hours to a finless body, sinking slowly toward a seafloor it will never reach. This practice has been happening for 600 years. Only 49 countries have banned it. The United States joined that list in 2023. But shark finning, as catastrophic as it is not even the primary cause of shark mortality on Earth right now. 50% of all sharks killed every year are killed as bycatch. Bycatch is the industry term for animals caught accidentally by fishing operations targeting something else. Long-line fishing, the practice of setting out kilometers of line with thousands of baited hooks, typically targeting tuna or swordfish, catches sharks by the millions. They take the bait meant for other fish. They get tangled in the line. They drown. The fishermen know how to reduce this. They can deploy gear designed to let sharks break free. They can lay their lines in areas where shark encounters are less common. They can use hooks that are less likely to hold a shark that is fighting to get free. The technology to dramatically reduce shark bycatch exists. They do not use it because there is no financial incentive to do so. An accidentally caught shark is worth money on international markets. The accidental catch can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, and in some cases, the accident is not entirely accidental. Some fishermen target sharks deliberately while technically fishing for something else, exploiting the gap between what the regulations say and what enforcement can actually detect. The result of all of this, the finning, the bycatch, the deliberate targeting, the recreational hunting, the Jaws era killing that went on for years, is a number that I want you to really hear. 100 million sharks every year. 100 million. Since 1970, shark populations globally have declined by more than 70%. Some species have declined by more than 90% in just 50 years, half a human lifetime. The oceanic white-tip shark. In 1969, a marine biologist named Stuart Springer described it as the most abundant large animal on the face of the earth. The most abundant. Not one of the most abundant. The most. The single most numerous large animal on the planet. Today, it has declined by 95 to 98% across 6 ocean regions. 98%. The most abundant large animal on Earth 50 years ago, functionally gone from most of its range today. And the biology of sharks makes recovery almost impossibly slow. A great white shark does not reach reproductive maturity until it is approximately 15 years old. A bull shark, 20 years. The Greenland shark, that ancient, slow-moving creature that can live for over 400 years in the Arctic, will not be able to reproduce until it is approximately 150 years old. 150. A Greenland shark born today will not reproduce until the year 2176. Sharks do not have thousands of offspring to compensate for this. Most species have a handful of pups or a few dozen in their entire reproductive lifetime. When you kill a juvenile shark today, you are not just removing one animal. you are removing every animal that shark would have produced over the next several decades. 100 million per year. Populations down 70%. Biology that cannot recover quickly under any circumstances. The numbers do not add up in the shark's favor, but they do not have to stay that way. Here is something the data also shows. In 1993, the United States implemented a fisheries management plan for sharks in the northern Atlantic. It was not perfect. The enforcement was not always consistent. The science was still developing, but it was real and it was applied. And in 2023, 30 years later, a study looked at what had happened to 11 shark species in that region. 6 of them were showing clear, measurable signs of recovery. 6 species, including the scalloped hammerhead, including the tiger shark, including animals that had been heading in one direction, down, for decades. The blacktip shark was declared overfished in 1998. By 2018, its population had recovered so substantially that sustainable fishing limits could be safely quadrupled. Quadrupled. An animal that was being hunted toward extinction recovered to the point where controlled harvest was possible again. In 20 years. Because the protections existed and were enforced. This is the thing about sharks that gets lost in the fear and the films and the statistics. They are survivors. They have been surviving on this planet for 450 million years. They survived the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs. They survived 5 mass extinction events. They survived every reorganization of the oceans, every climate shift, every ecological catastrophe the Earth has produced in 500 million years. The only thing they have not survived in their entire 450 million year history is us. And unlike the asteroid, unlike the mass extinctions, unlike the ice ages, this one we can choose to stop. I want to close with something concrete, the same way I want to close everything on this channel, not with a vague statement about the importance of nature, with a specific image you can hold on to. Right now, in the waters off the coast of South Africa, there is a great white shark that was alive before Jaws was released, before the film that defined how an entire civilization thought about this animal. That shark was swimming in those waters before the hunting parties, before the Jaws-era killing spree, before the shark fin market reached its peak, before any of the statistics we have discussed tonight became what they are. That shark has been investigating unfamiliar objects in the water with test bites for 50 years. It has been learning which hunting grounds are most productive, returning to them year after year, remembering. It has been doing what great whites do, slowly, patiently, with an intelligence that we are still working to fully understand. It has no idea what we have done to its species. It does not know about the films. It does not know about the finning. It does not know about the 100 million per year. It is just out there, doing what great whites do. And here is what I want you to hold on to from everything we have covered tonight. The fear you feel about sharks, the tightening in your stomach when something brushes your leg in open water, that fear was handed to you. You did not come into the world with it. It was built in 11 days in the summer of 1916, and a film that opened in June of 1975, from material that does not accurately represent the actual animal. The actual animal is one of the most diverse, ecologically essential, biologically extraordinary groups of creatures on this planet. It has been here 4 times longer than the dinosaurs. It has solved problems of survival that no other lineage has solved in quite the same way. It has friends. It walks on land. It has jaws that shoot out of its face. It shuts its own brain down to wait out a crisis. And we are killing 100 million of them every year because we are afraid. The sharks we should actually be afraid of are not the ones in the water. They are the ones disappearing from it. That is worth staying for. That is worth knowing. If this documentary gave you something you did not have before you press play, if the ocean feels even slightly different to you now than it did at the beginning, then subscribe to Abyss Files. Every week we go somewhere the surface does not show you. Every week there is something the ocean is still hiding. And I promise you, it only gets stranger from here.